So, I started doing some mock drafts and stuff, and this guy started popping up a while ago, months ago, kind of in the later rounds, and I'm going, let me just look into this guy here. Um, so the Bengals are in need of an interior defensive lineman, namely a three tech, one that can get after the passer, obviously help out in the run game too, but maybe get those rotational snaps in there and have effective rotational snaps. I think that's why most people are enamored with Kalijah Cansey, the athletic profile, the production, etc. But there may be, I hate saying poor man's version, but there may be a guy that could be had later in the draft, the middle rounds of the draft from a big school. He's got some question marks, but he tested really well and he plays a position. He's a versatile guy, and he's a guy that I think the Bengals could look at in the middle rounds. Now, who is it that to whom am I referring, John Sharon? And that is Jalen Redmond, the interior defensive lineman from Oklahoma. And here's the profile popping up for everybody here. I will full screen this for everybody as we get started here. So, who is this guy? Some of you may ask. Some of you may know already who he is, but he is a guy who's played a little bit of edge, a little bit of interior. He's 6'2", 291. He is older. He's 24, just turned 24 in March. He's a redshirt senior. There are reasons for that. He did have a 4.81 40-yard dash. My understanding is that was the second best for interior defensive lineman at the combine. And the arm length, not long, 32 and 5/8 inches, John, but over 2 inches, I believe, or at 2 inches longer than Kalijah Cansey, a guy that a lot of Bengals fans like. So here's some of the things. The numbers aren't eye-popping, but 71 total tackles in his career, 23 last year. Tackles for loss, this is a good number here, 31.5, especially with some time being missed. I'll talk about that in a little bit. 10 last year, 14 total sacks from the outside, from the inside, 4 last year, primarily inside. Passes defended 6. He had 4 of those last year. That's a good number. Forced fumbles, only 1 in his career, none last year. 2 fumble recoveries, none last year. And we have a fun clip in a little bit about one of those fumble recoveries in just a second. So this is a guy, John, that I think, middle of the rounds, he tested well, and I'll show the RAS later. Here he is. Here, coming in, does a nice spin move off I believe it was the guard there, makes the tackle off the quarterback who was running the ball. And then here he is. He does a lot of this stuff, the loop around and find the crease to get in there. I've noticed that on tape. Here he is off the edge there, beats the guy off the edge, off the right tackle spot, gets in there. We've slowed this one down for you against the run here. Kind of pushes against the lineman there, and then comes in, makes the tackle for loss there. Nice play, and I believe that was a forced fumble. And then you see here, kind of fills the hole, sheds off the block, makes the tackle for loss as he's getting pulled to the ground by the Kansas State offensive lineman. We've slowed a lot of these down for you here. And then you see here, nice move laterally. He got a little help there from, I believe, a linebacker, but nice move laterally to make a play. This is a tackle for loss. Again, kind of splits the blocks, makes a nice tackle for loss in between there. And then this is the fun one here. This is everybody's hero from last year, Brock Purdy. Ball gets knocked out, and then look at him scoop. Outrunning big guys, but, he's moving for a big dude, right? He's moving. He takes it to the house. So that's the nice fumble recovery that I told you about earlier. You see that, there's 2 different RAS scores here. The first one I'm starting with is the defensive end. If you look at him as a defensive end, only 7.72. Good weight, good bench press, good vertical, but the rest is kind of good, okay. Total RAS score as a defensive end, 7.72. Look at this one as an interior defensive lineman. You see there the poor is the size, but look at the speed grade, elite. Composite agility grade, great. Composite explosion grade, elite. So 9.68, it was the earlier testing, but he's still known to be around that number for the RAS score as an interior defensive lineman. So there's a big upside with that going forward. Now, why isn't this guy being talked about a lot? We talked about the age, and the reason why I'm going to start kind of down at the bottom of these little hash marks here. Health and age concerns. There were some blood clot issues, I think, early in his career. He took a year off of COVID because of the blood clot stuff, and he just kind of wanted to stay away from football there. So he's kind of a super senior. And so there's a little bit of, he has some missed time besides that. So, there's a little bit of concern there, but he's got versatility. You can see there, played off the edge, played at 3 tech. Is he a tweener? Can he stand up to NFL size and talent regularly? He still has shorter arm length overall, but is longer than Cansey. And I'm going to show you something in just a second. Really good block shedder on tape as well. So those are some of the things that I saw from him. And before I get your take on this guy, John, I want to, and I hate to do this to the poor kid, because I don't like to compare to all-time greats and all that kind of stuff, but I'm going to show you something. I wish I could side-by-side these, but I'm going to do this here. This is just a snapshot thing on NFL.com of Jalen Redmond's prospect profile. You see the grade, average backup or special teamer is kind of what they tag him at this point in time. You see the size, 6'2", 291, the arms, 32 5/8 inch, hand 10 and 1 1/8. You see the production a little low. The defensive tackle rank puts him at 8th. Look at the athleticism score, though, puts him at 3rd for the position at the combine, and then the total score of 75. So you look at the next gen stats breakdown along with the height, weight, all those measurables there. And I want to pull this guy up next to it as comparison, because there are comparisons, and this guy carved out a Hall of Fame career and was drafted in the 4th round, and that is Mr. Geno Atkins.
Jesus Christ.
So I know, I hate to do it, but look, 6'1", 293, the arms, 32 inches, hands smaller. You see the similar production score. The production score wasn't there. It was 11th for that class, 2010 combine. But look at the athleticism score. He was tops defensive tackle rank at the combine for that. So you look at that, and then you see here the total score. So look, I'm not saying he's Geno Atkins. I'm not saying that's what you need to expect or anything like that. But there are similarities here. And what my point in bringing that up is, Geno Atkins was one of the top interior defensive tackles of his generation. He was a 4th round pick, and there are some measurable stuff that are similar. There's maybe some tape stuff that's similar here. So I want to put all of that into context, and I want to give, now that you've kind of seen a little bit, heard a little bit about this guy, I'm sure you know a bit about him. Anyway, John, I would love to hear your take on him.
Yeah, when I was putting together like fits for what the Bengals, like if you were to identify their needs and where they're likely to take each position in the draft, Jalen Redmond popped up as like that ideal development 3 technique to be found somewhere in the middle of the draft. The reason why I struggle with, like, I understand like the Geno comp, and obviously it's not a perfect comp by any means, but the reason why I feel like it would be harder for him to carve out like a long-term starter career is there are definite issues with production. Like, he was 12th percentile in solo tackle market share at Oklahoma. The pass rushing production and just the overall backfield production was there. I believe PFF charted him with an average depth of tackle of negative 0.4 yards, which means
a lot of tackles for loss and stuff. Yeah,
he was getting into the backfield, and as we saw with those highlights, and by far, I think next to Adi Barwe from Northwestern, the best overall athlete in this entire class of defensive tackles. He was above the 93rd percentile in every single one of explosion, speed, and flexibility for his size. It just hurts when you don't have a strong production profile and you're already 24 coming into the NFL. And those are the reasons why he won't be drafted until at earliest round 4. But if you're in the later part of round 4 and you've knocked it out of the park so far with your 3 other picks, I could definitely see the argument to take Redmond at that point. I think you might be able to get him a little bit later just because circumstances that weren't in his control. Obviously, the COVID year really hurt him, and entering the league at such an old age, like this is Rennell Wren almost, because Rennell Wren was a great athlete coming out of Arizona State, but he was also 23-24, and he was also not that productive at Arizona State. So there are similar positives and negatives from past Bengals that can kind of be attributed to Redmond here. That's why he will be a 3rd round pick. But if you want to bank on the athleticism as being just a rotational guy to start, and if he's anything more than that, that's phenomenal. Like, I'm okay with that bet, but the expectations are definitely tempered.
So you make a really good point about the production stuff, and obviously that there's things about that are concerning. My counter argument to that, though, is he didn't really, while it's an asset that he played some edge stuff and he played interior and he moved to different spots inside and it showed flashes at each spot. He never really found kind of a true home and didn't really, have a specific position for say like 2 full years. So we talked about DTR last week where it was like he's a 5-year guy. Finally, when Chip Kelly got there, you started to see the big strides and all of that. Well, here it kind of is also a little bit like, well, did he really have a true fair shot because he was moved around so much? That's where you kind of go, well, if you just kind of played him, had he bulked up maybe, as a sophomore, as a junior in his final 2 years, you say, hey, bulk up a little bit. You're going to be a 3 tech. You're going to be right inside, and let's coach you up there. Maybe the production would have shot up a little bit more instead of kind of moving him around so much. But that's what the defense needed, and he had the skill set to be able to do some stuff off the edge, move around along the defensive line. So he's a guy I like. I think there's I think if you get him day 3, maybe early-ish, middle-ish day 3, I think there's a lot of value there. And I think even if you've bypassed IDL in those first 3 rounds, this could be a guy that could be that rotational guy. Maybe it takes him a little bit to ramp up or what have you, but this could be one of those guys rotationally that could help you out, particularly with the other starting talent on the defensive line that the Bengals have that would be kind of shoulder to shoulder with him.
Yeah, he just fits. I don't want to say he fits exactly what they need because, again, that's maybe giving him a little bit too much praise, but like the prototype of what they're missing at defensive tackle, he's basically that.
Yeah.
Just an all-around great athlete who can just push the pocket, just shoot the gap immediately, and that creates opportunities for guys like Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard to get more sacks than they did last year. Like the absence of Larry Ogunjobi, like that was the main impact of his absence, was that there wasn't enough penetration up the middle, and it was harder to just finish that pressure off the edge against other quarterbacks. So the role for Redmond is immediate. That's the fear when you're just drafting just for a 1-year outlook. Like beyond this year, I don't know how much more Redmond has to develop just because he'll already be 25 next year. But I would be interested to see what kind of impact he can make this year for sure.
I just bring this up. We're going to move on to the next guy in just a second here, but I just bring this up here. I'm doing some quick math. You see the tackle amount, 71 in his career, right? 31.5 of those tackles have gone for a loss of some kind. That's over 44%, almost 45% of his tackles have been tackles for loss, be it sacks or a negative run. And then you look at just last year, 10 of his 23, same thing, about 44% of all of his tackles have gone, or last year were for loss. And so that's a guy where, the overall production, in terms of huge amount of tackles or what have you, isn't there, but he's a guy that, when he makes the play, it's usually a high impact play. And that's where maybe as a rotational guy, it's kind of a pinch hitter that seems to swing for the fence and, every once in a while he'll put one out of the park for you, and more often than not, when he gets his hands on a ball carrier or a quarterback, they're going down for a loss. So, intriguing player. And I think, again, if he's there day 3, could be a guy that would bring a lot of value. So